I'll explain about user-defined exceptions or custom exceptions. What do you mean by user-defined exception? What is the difference between built-in exceptions and user-defined exceptions? First of all, I want to tell you about the built-in exceptions. Built-in exceptions are nothing but a ready-made exceptions. They wrote the code for the exception. They are ready-made exceptions we will use in the program. For example, what are the built-in exceptions you can see over here? I wrote some of the built-in exceptions here. The arithmetic exception, the null pointer exception, array index bound of exception, negative array size exception, class not found exception, number format exception, interrupted exception, illegal argument exception, which are called as the built-in exception, they are ready-made exceptions. Everything they wrote the code for this exception. We will, whenever it is required, we will use in this program. But if you want to create your own exception apart from these exceptions, they wrote the code for the already predefined exceptions, which are also called as the predefined exceptions. But if you want to create your own exception, then that is called as user defined exception, which is also called as a custom exception. You are creating own exception. But apart from these exceptions, which are provided by the Java itself, because they are ready-made exceptions, built-in or predefined exception. But how do you create your own exception? That is called as the user-defined exception. Okay, as for your applications, as for your requirement, you can create your own exception. For example, when you are working with the banking, when you withdraw amount from your account, then if the sufficient balance is not there in your account, but you can erase the exception, the insufficient fund exception. That kind of exception, it is not there. It is not there in the built-in exception. What you have to do at that time is you can create your own exception. That is called as the predefined exception. In many examples, okay, suppose when you entering the marks should be 0 to 100, and marks should not be a negative. Okay, at that time, if you want to erase an exception, you can create your own exception. That is called as the user-defined exception. Because all these exception must be a subclass of the exception class. The top of the class is called as the exception. Whatever the exception do you want to create, that exception must be a what? Subclass of the exception class. That thing you have to remember. Then today I will explain you with help of the example. First I will write the example. With help of that example I will explain you how do you create. The syntax is that first of all I will tell you the syntax how do you create the user defined exceptions. First of all, the class, whatever the class name or exception name, it is called as the user defined exception. User defined, just wait a second, it is not visible to you. Class, that is called as user defined exception name. You should give whatever the exception do you want. Extends, what is called exception class. Then you should write the code as per your requirements. But whatever the exception do you want to create, this is the exception is the class name. That must be extends. Exception is the parent class for the user defined exceptions. Here the built-in exception also, the exception is the main class for parent class for all the built-in exception also. But if you want to create a user defined exception, that must be also subclass of the exception class. Here what is the code do you want to write as per your requirement? You can write some code over here. Class, for example, public class rank mark exception. I want to write the program for it. Extends what? Exception. Exception is the package of lang package No need to import the lang package, you know it. Then here I want to constructor for the rank mark exception string is. Then of the super keyword we can invoke the parameterized constructor of the super class. Which one is the super class is here? Exception is the parent class for the rank mark exception class. Then super, then yes. Why we using this statement? I will tell you after that. The separate class, whenever you write the statement, the rank mark exception has been created. Then how do you use this exception in your program? I will tell you. Hope it is clear. Then class student. Whenever you giving the class, that first letter must be a capital letter. In every word, first letter is a capital letter when you are giving the class name. There is a coding standards for giving the name for the class. What is student performance? RS student grade, RS student performance class. Then here, then what you have to do is, then I want to write the method. I want to use the static method. If you want to use the another normal method or instance method also you can use. I want to use the static method, but if you are using the static method, what is the advantage? You can also know it. That's why I am using the static method is here. Static void calculate average calculate average, because whenever the marks as given, then what you have to do, marks must not be a negative. If whenever the marks as given as a negative, you can erase an exception, that is called as the wrong mark exception. Got my point? Then when array is passed, then what you have to do is, here all okay. Then here you can calculate, then you are getting the marks, okay, as a input. Then what we have to do is, here we can able to find the average of a student marks. Then what you have to do is, here then simply I can write the code if int I, because there is no space there, better to write here, because I am writing here, please, there is no space, that's why exception, or else we can write here, because many students may confuse. Yeah, here int I, then I will use the for loop for I equal to 0, because array index will start from 0, then I less than what is called a of length, at a of length, I place. Then if ai less than 0, because we are checking for the negative mark, whether you are entered negative marks or not, If less than 0, then we can erase an exception. Here, what is called throw new rank mark exception followed by, because here entered negative marks, entered negative marks, and given negative marks, or else you can show one message, our marks must not be a negative, marks must not be a negative. Negative. If it is not, what is called, not negative, you can easily find out. Then here I can take the another variable, the sum, it is called as what? The int sum equal to 0. Then sum equal sum plus what is called a of 5, then we can find the sum, after that we can get the average. Then double average here, the average equal sum by what is called a dot length, number of, then you can find out the total marks also. What is the total marks? Then for example 600, okay, sum by 600, then we can able to calculate the average. Then if you want to display system dot out dot println average student marks average equal what is called, you should display average. Because we can find out the sum of all marks of a student, then you need to find out the average. Public static void main string args int, because here I am using the try int array of what is called 60, 80, 90, then 50, 70, 75. The marks as given for the student, then we can invoke this function if you want to calculate the average marks of a student. Then what I did here, yeah, then calculate average. Then followed by the array name. Then here catch. What is the exception we are given here? Wrong mark exception. E. Then here write a system dot println e dot get message. Then catch will be closed. Then after that try catch. Catch will be closed here. And then after that the main method will be closed. Then class, end class here. Here main method end. This is called as the end main method. End main. Then here first of all please listen carefully. This is the execution of the program will be start from the main function. Here the array is initialized with some marks. Then calculator. Here this method is called without any object. That's why I use the static method. The static method called with help of the class name, or else you can be able to give the class name. Okay, same the class name actually is not required. If you want to use, what is the class name I use here? The student performance dot. Within the same class, that's why I did not use the class name also. If you use the another class, then you can call it by using the class name. What is the class name? Student performance dot calculate average. Because I am using the within the class, that's why the class name is also not required to invoke the calculate average method. Got my point? Yeah. Then whenever you write this statement, the control will comes to this method because it is a user defined method. In method is detect any type of the exception. The method if detects any type of the exception which will be thrown. Any what type of exception if it is detected? If the method has detected wrong mark exception, it will be thrown to the catch. The next level of the catch is comes to here. Here for the method you can use the throws what is called wrong mark exception. You must be throw. Wrong mark exception, it is only one word. After the method throws wrong mark exception, because if the method has detects wrong mark exception, it has to be thrown. Yeah. Then when control comes to here, the array will be stored because A. Then I has been declared integer. The sum equal to 0 initially because we need to find the sum of all the marks of a student. Double average because we can get in pointed values. That's why we get it as we can declare as a double over here. Then I equal to 0, I dot a dot length. Okay, a dot length means because every time you need to find the a dot length, or else before that int n equal, it is better to write instead of writing a dot length here. It will take more time to execute this program. In real time application, a dot length you can store in another variable. Okay, instead of that you can use n values here. That is, as a good programmer you can write like this. Then I plus plus. Then average int n equal to a dot length, because by using the length method we can able to find out the marks of a students. Okay, then you use the length method. Then what you have to do is, one length is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here what is the value we got? 6. Here what is the n value? 6. Okay. Then a of 5. What is the a of 5? Then all the elements will be stored in the a of 5 because array name is a. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Please listen carefully. And then 60, then 80, 90, 50, 70, 75. Yeah, 0 to 5. Then first value check is a of 0 is greater than 0 or not. 60 greater than 0, there is no problem. then directly which will comes to here. The sum equal to what is value? 0 plus 16. The sum value becomes what? 16. Then after that I value becomes incremented by 1. Then I value becomes what is called 1. Then now we can get the a of I, whether it is a negative or not, we can check it over here. Then it is not, it is also not a negative number. Then 60 plus 80. Then what is called 140. Then some value will be at 140. Then after the I value incremented by 1, I value 2. Then what is the values here? 90. It is condition returns false. Then which will come here plus 90. What is the values here? 90 plus 60. Then 240. Then I value incremented by 1. I value becomes 3. Now I value becomes 3. 3 is what? 50. It is not a negative number. Again 240 plus what is called 50. Then what is the values here? Some value becomes 290. Then as usual, then 290, what is next? 70. Then I value will be incremented by 1. Then 70 will be added here. Then what is called 360. Then again I value is incremented, I value becomes 5. What is called? It is also for 75 now. Yeah. It is called 75. Then 36 plus 75. Then 60 plus 40, 400. 40 plus 35. 435, I think. Hope. Okay. Then after that, and enable I value becomes 6. Then 6 less than 6 condition becomes false. Then which jumps out of the loop. What is the next statement? Average equal to sum 435 by then 600. Then we can get the average. Out of 600, you got 435. Okay. Then system dot out dot println, then average would be displayed. Okay. Into 100, then you can got the correct percentage. Okay. Then in case of here I am giving the minus 50. For example, in mistakenly, as a user, mistakenly I entered the marks as minus, suppose minus 30 or minus 70 or 72. Then at this time there is no problem. In the previous example, it does not get any exception. The program has executed smoothly. But here, whenever the marks is given as a negative, then which will comes to here, then when I value becomes 2, a of 5, what is the a of 5? Minus 72. Because the condition returns true. Then what is happens? If the minus value as given, then which throw an exception. What is the exception he is throwing? Throw new wrong marks exception. Marks must not be a negative. Then here, because this will be thrown to here, because the constructor knew where instance has been created for the wrong marks exception. That's why marks must not be a negative, which will be stored in the S variable. Then super S, it can be override in the exception class. From the exception, it will be thrown the, what is the exception? Marks not, what is called marks, what is the exception you throw? Wrong marks exception. First, it comes to here, which will invoke the superclass constructor exception, from which the exception class will be thrown a wrong marks exception. Then which will comes to where is the catch block is here? The wrong mark exception, the argument as placed here, wrong mark exception will be placed over here. Then system.out e dot get message. What is the output? We got it. It is what is called wrong mark exception colon wrong mark exception colon wrong mark exception colon what is called marks must not be a negative. Okay, we get this output when you enter negative value. Hope it is a simple example for the user defined exception. If you want to more example for the from user defined exception, just you connect me through comment box window. Then if you write the problem, then I will provide the solution to your problem. I hope it is clear. What is user defined exception? You can create your own exception apart from the built-in exception, that is called as the user defined exception. Here wrong mark exception is not a built-in exception. I created my own as per my requirement. Okay, as per your requirement you can create your own exceptions. Okay, if you have any doubt regarding this example, please connect me through comment box window. Thank you one and all for watching my videos.